Okay, as people are coming in, I'm going to start the introduction. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including our book club Monday night, which is reading Transcendent Kingdom, an event with Kodo Nishimura for his book, This Monk Wears Heels, Be Who You Are, on Thursday. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is also where you can purchase tonight's book, The Fashion Orphans. We're excited to welcome Randy, MJ, and Barbara, and especially happy to be with them at the beginning of their Fashion Orphans journey. I want to tell you a little bit about them, and I will turn the event over to them. I'd also like to encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to as many questions as we can. Randy Susan Meyers is the internationally best-selling author of 6 novels, including Wasted, The Widow of Wall Street, Accidents of Marriage, The Comfort of Lies, and The Murderer's Daughters. Her books have been designated one of the 10 best works of fiction in 2010, 2014, and 2017 by the Massachusetts Center for the Book, an affiliate of the Library of Congress. Randy was born in Brooklyn, New York, and now lives in Boston with her husband, where she teaches writing at the Grub Street Writing Center. Her novels have been translated into more than 26 languages. MJ Rose is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of more than 18 novels, including The Book of Lost Fragrances and Cartier's Hope. Among other awards, her last 11 novels have all appeared on the Indie Next list. The Fox TV series Past Lives was based on MJ's novel, The Reincarnationist. MJ's books have been translated into more than 30 languages. She's also the founder of AuthorBuzz.com and the co-founder of 1001darknights.com and Blue Box Press. B.A. Shapiro is the best-selling author of The Collector's Apprentice, The Muralist, and The Art Forger, which won the New England Book Award for Fiction and the Boston Authors Society Award for Fiction, among other honors. Her upcoming book is Metropolis, which is due out in May. Barbara's books have been selected as community reads in numerous cities and translated throughout the world. She and her husband divide their time between Boston and Florida, and lucky for her, she is in Florida right now. Yeah, and without further ado, I will turn the event over to these fabulous authors.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to be able to do this with my 2 good friends who wrote a fabulous book. So The Fashion Orphans, I mean, it is such fun, and it's got so much stuff going on. It's really fun. It's about mothers and daughters and sisters and sibling rivalry and fashion and bakeries. I mean, it's just, New York City. It's just great. But it's not just fun. There's a lot of other things that are going on. And it's about capitalism. It's about class. It's about nature versus nurture. It's about death. It's about feminism. I mean, it's exactly the kind of book that I like to read, where you have, these wonderful characters and this good story, but there also are other levels that it works on. And I just enjoyed it. And it's, this great collaboration by these 2 wonderful writers, and I couldn't be happier. It's basically, I think it's a novel that goes beyond the sum of its parts. It's really good. And
okay, I'm done. Let's just leave it at that. You just did it perfectly. We have nothing else to say. That was just the perfect description of the book.
Okay. We're done then. Nice to see everybody. But I'm not the only one who thinks this. These are just a few of the things that people have said about The Fashion Orphans. It's a beautiful book. actually, I have to take my glasses off to do this. It's a beautiful book. Both it's a beautiful book about family, both real and found, which is about the friendships. It's the enduring love of family that you will savor when you reach the end of this beautiful novel. Took me out of the cold pandemic winter into the best possible way. It's heartwarming. It's a great read, well-paced, interesting throughout, and a fabulous story that dives into the complicated relationships of family and offers a stylish escape into the world of high fashion and Chanel. So congratulations, you two. This is really fun. Glad to be part of this with you. So
Barbara, that was the best intro of my life.
It was.
I'm so glad you liked it. But even before I start the questions, I have two other things I want to say. Two of my favorite lines in the book. One was, did Cinderella worry about using Windex? Using Windex on her glass slippers? And the second one, a slightly inebriated woman often spoke a sober woman's truth. Was just great. So one of the things, we can talk about the book and about your wonderful characters and the story, but, as a novelist, I am, and when I write, one of the things I like about writing novels is that I get to be the boss and I get to be in charge of everything. And here you shared being in charge. And so I'm just fascinated with this collaboration and how did it work and how did it happen? So Randy, why don't you start talking about this? How did you come up with the idea of collaborating on this book? Did you go back and forth? Did you both want to do it? How did this start to come about?
Well, I would say that it came up very organically. We were talking, we were on the phone just gabbing, and we were talking about how women of a certain age are less seen in novels, and especially in a happy way. Usually they are like, oh, now that she was 65, blah, blah, blah. So, and we were just talking, and then I happened to say to MJ, I just read a thing about Japan now has romance novels specifically for women over 60 with them as the protagonists. So we just talked about doing something fun. It just came up, and we went back and forth, and we were really aiming towards the women's market. And I would say that it was very different from writing a book alone. It was much lighter and airier. And I don't know what you think, MJ, but there really wasn't any, it went so smoothly.
Yeah, well, I've written a lot of books with other people. I think at this point I've written 4 novellas with Steve Berry, and a full-length novel coming out next year with 2 other writers. And I was in advertising, like on Madison Avenue kind of advertising back when I was younger, and you're a writer and you have an art director and you do everything together. And one of the first lessons that you learn as a creative team is to give away the word I, so that you're both working together to come up with an idea, and you stop ever thinking about who came up with what, because it's death. It's going to destroy any partnership. So I had gone through a lot of different versions of this with other writers and sort of had known that there are easier and more difficult ways of doing this. The most difficult way of doing this is if 2 people sit in a room and write a book line by line. You might as well kill yourself before you even start, because you can't do it. I mean, you can do it and kill each other, or you can find a better way. And for me, the better way has always been that one person writes the first draft, and the other person edits it, and then that person edits it, and then that person edits it. And the person who's going to read the second draft and has to sort of, again, you give up on the word I, and the person who wrote the first draft has to give up on the word I. You're never supposed to think again about who wrote what. And
Except, isn't
honestly,
that really hard?
not for me. I can't, when I read my own books over in the editing process, I don't even remember writing the lines that I wrote by myself. So this wasn't very hard for me. We didn't have any arguments about any lines. We had decided up front that if it really mattered to one person, like, so you could edit the other person any way you wanted, you could get rid of anything you wanted. And if the other person noticed it and really had a problem with what was taken out, we would discuss it. And I think there were only 2 times where I took out something, Randy put it back, and I read it and was like, I really don't want it in there, or vice versa. And we never argued about it. One person, you just give up. You just can't hold on to that kind of ego and have the process turn out smoothly. It's going to be disjointed if you do that.
So Randy, had you written a novel with anybody before?
I actually did, but it was about 1,000 years ago. And it was with a dear, dear friend who's, I know, in the audience right now. And we had a great time. We didn't sell it. It didn't sell, but we had a lot of fun. There's a weird fun factor in it that's very different from when, not that I would prefer one over the other. I mean, I love what I'm doing right now, writing my book. I tend to, and also I think one of the things that happened with Melissa and I is that we have different styles, different favorite kinds of books. And I think we managed, I hope, to get the best of both of us, to bring a whole new genre.
Yeah, I think that's also a really important thing, that if you try to do, if you're both similar and you have similar interests and similar tastes, I think it's going to be more complicated. In the past, and in this case too, we have different disciplines and different strengths. And I think the strengths for having, again, looking at my experience with this, having different strengths is probably the most important part if you're thinking about doing it with somebody. Because when we were writing, it was very common for Randy to leave out, like, she's great with dialogue. She loves dialogue. She's great with families and lots of people. Much more, not a lot of people. I'm much more about descriptions. So she would very often be writing a chapter and it would literally say, Melise, fill in description. And I was ecstatic because I could go write the description of the building or the furniture or the pocketbook, and I didn't have to write the dialogue, which I'm perfectly happy not to write the dialogue. So I think that that's a really important part of it also, is that the conflict doesn't arise because you each know what your strength is and you're not competing with each other.
Yeah, we really played to our strengths.
Yeah, well, it shows. That's for sure. So which one of you had the strength about fashion and Coco Chanel? And
that was me.
Tell us about that.
This is Fuzzle, by the way. This is Fuzzle.
How did I know that?
Sit in my lap.
Oh no, Barbara. That was definitely MJ's wheelhouse, and I think she has something to prove it right there.
Yeah, right next.
Yeah, actually, I've
there.
been bringing this to my little Zooms because it was really one of the inspirations for the book. This is my first vintage piece ever. It's a Chanel pocketbook from the 1980s that I found in 2019 or 18, I don't remember, in France at a vintage shop, and for about a third of what it would have cost if it was new. And it was in pretty good shape, but then there's a fabulous store in New York called Art Bag, where you can bring old fabulous pieces and they refurbish them. So I brought it there and they restrung the strap and they re-brassed the strap. And I was so crazy that I had been able to find this thing and afford it, and then it get fixed up and have it look like new, and it's like perfect inside. When I bought it, there was a pill box inside, a little tiny pill box with no pills inside, but it was, my writer's brain went insane.
Yeah.
Like, who was the woman that owned this? How did it wind up in the store? And why is there a pillbox inside? Why, the people who brought it into the store, why was there still a pillbox in there? Why didn't they empty it out of that too? So I had been thinking a lot about, I want to write something about vintage. And then it sort of all led into that. So that's my little show and tell.
That's a very nice show and tell, because we haven't really talked about what the book is about. So the setup is that there are these two half sisters who are estranged, and they're both kind of estranged from their mother too. And both of them are having financial problems, and their mother dies, and they go to hear the reading of the will, thinking that maybe, suddenly their financial problems will go away. And instead, what they discover is their mother left them a closet full of all of these fabulous pieces and clothes and purses and jewelry, and they don't quite know what to do with it or what it means. And they fight and they love each other and they go back and forth on all kinds of things. And I won't tell you the end, but it works out. It all works out for the sisters, which is great. So how did you deal, Randy, how did you deal with the fact that this high fashion was not in your wheelhouse?
Well, first, I do love fashion. I'm obsessed with clothes. I just didn't have the same knowledge. And also, again, we play to our strengths. I came from a John's Bargain Store Gap background, and one of the sisters is really from that background because they are half sisters. But I also come from a deep love of vintage. I started buying my first vintage, and we're talking from Goodwill's in New York City, but it was very cool. I thought I was the coolest thing in the world, walking around on the streets of Manhattan, going to CCNY wearing an old nightgown that I made into a dress. Looking back, thank God I have no pictures. But like, for instance, right now, what I'm wearing, these earrings are very old vintage garnet and gold that my best friend Ginny gave to me. And they were old then. We were in P-Town, Provincetown, and I admired them so much, this old filigree earrings. And she snuck in and bought them and gave them to me. This was like 25 years. I didn't know till my birthday, and this was like 25 years ago. But the thing about the book, it's not just about fashion, it's about the things we inherit. It's about,
I'm having a little dog crisis here. I have to just take somebody out of this room. I'll be right back.
it's about learning who your family is.
You
about
keep
the
going
things
without me.
that pass on. And this is my most beloved thing that I own. It's a really heavy brass mortar and pestle that comes from Romania, that my grandmother, when she came over by herself at the age of like 13, why she brought a mortar and pestle, I don't know. But the fact that I have this, it feels like I'm holding family. And I think the sisters go on a discovery, not just of fashion, but of who their family is and how they can come back to who they are. And one of the things that meant a lot to me was when they go to the Museum of Jewish History or Jewish Heritage in New York City, and they look at all the things that people brought with them to the camps that somehow have survived. And like, people hold on to pieces of their family, even when it's, a tiny piece of glass. And so that's a really meaningful thing to me.
And also, you explored in the book not just family of blood, but friends as family and in-laws as family, and all of the different ways that families can be together and the cross currents that go in between them. So was that one of the original ideas, or how did those ideas evolve?
Well, I think it started with friendship, because our original idea was to write about two friends.
Oh,
and then it kind of morphed into sisters. And then we always wanted to add on a group of friends. And I think especially I saw with my mother how much her friends meant to her in the last couple of decades of her life. And I know how much friends mean to me and to MJ. I mean, I'm wearing a piece that my friend made that means so much to me. So I think that we had friendship What do you think, MJ? I think from the beginning it was
I
pretty.
didn't at all. I didn't have, my idea had nothing to do with friendship. That's really Randy's wheelhouse, the whole friend family thing. That's really much more how she envisions fiction. I've read all of her books. That whole, group dynamic is very much her and not really me at all. And she really developed those parts of the book herself. And I just
It's
went
funny.
along for the ride because it's not my strength.
And that was so much fun in what we did because, MJ was right. I would get to a scene in Bergdorf's and I'd write, whatever, describe this whole place. I don't know. It's not and art is something that MJ is just so knowledgeable about, so much
Yeah.
more than I could ever be. And so there was a lot of fun in just letting go of, giving on to Caesar, that which is Caesar's.
It was interesting reading it and having read, both of your books. I could tell which part was, which one was doing which part. But I don't think it would feel at all that way to somebody who didn't know you, that it feels like, it's a whole. It doesn't feel
Yeah,
at all.
I think that the writing is smooth. The subject matters are specific to anyone who knows us. But because of the way we wrote it, where Randy would write the first draft, and then I'd start editing, the voice, when you work that way, the voice stays very intact.
Did you ever think of writing, one of you would do Lulu and the other one would do Gabby?
I had done that.
Uh-huh.
And I recommended us not doing it because, so I've done it with a man. I did it with Chris Gortner. We wrote 3 novels about a jewel heist in a couple in the 1950s. So I kind of like To Catch a Thief, fun stuff. And it worked really well because there's a man and a woman, so the voices are really different. I tried it once with another writer. We wrote a whole book. We never sold it because it was 2 women and the voices were just different enough, but not different enough that it was jarring. So you got to really be careful if you do it that you're really different or don't do it, because it just, in that case, it just, everybody who read it was like, something's just not working and I don't know what it is. And we realized afterwards what it was. So this time it wasn't even an issue. I wouldn't do it that other way with 1 and 1. Unless it was somebody who you knew totally would be different.
We had the advantage, I think, of having each other and being able to write, by writing it just like, not separately, but, I would write a draft, she would rewrite that draft. We got to take advantage of both of our strengths. So we got to have more fun with it. MJ got to go more into, the beauty that she brings into the page. And I got to dive more into the mishigas of family that I love to dive into so much. And I think between us, we came out with a product that was pretty interesting. I hope.
Yes, it definitely is very, very, very interesting. So if you originally started that, you had friends, how did that evolve into the sisters and then evolve into the half sisters and the mother-daughter relationships are so strong?
Well, there was always a mother figure. And originally it was going to be 2, I remember this, that it was going to be a friend going down to Boca. I think it was in my head where I had family going through her mother's stuff. And then her best friend comes out to help her. And, sort of like that, but it wasn't really, this, Barbara, when you're going for a story, you really have to wait for it to hit you in the heart. And we were spitballing back and forth and back and forth. And I actually can't remember who came up with this, how it happened. I remember where we were when we zoned in on it.
Yeah, right.
It was a long weekend in St. Louis of all places, because that's who doesn't vacation in St. Louis. We were there for a book event, and we spent in a beautiful, beautiful hotel with a gorgeous restaurant that we lived in, for 3 days. And it was, I don't know, I just remember the spitballing till the arrow hit. What do you think, MJ?
No memory at all. Not a clue. Not a clue. With my own books, I don't remember. With this book, I don't remember. I don't know how they happen. It's some kind of magical mystery to me. So
You don't
And she's a
remember,
great spitballer, and we would just go back and forth, and it came out really, it really came out like that. It was
sounds
a
wonderful.
confirmation.
I wish I could have been there with you.
Yeah.
That just sounds like so
that
much
would have been
fun.
fun. The only
Yeah,
thing I had to do was I had to swear to my sister that it wasn't about us, and it's not.
it's not,
Nothing like me and my sister, no. But
I
she
mean,
was
that
so,
like
when she
my
heard
sister.
about it, she was like, oh my God, are you writing about the two of us? I'm like, no, we both have the same mother and the same father, and we're both happy with our mother and father, and we're very similar. And you didn't grow up in Brooklyn, and it's not about you, I promise.
and it also sounds like that story would be kind of boring.
Yeah, yeah.
You need the trouble,
I
and
brought the
so
trouble.
you got the
brought the
trouble.
family
Yeah, I
trouble.
know. Yeah. Well, you can draw on that. My brother once said to me that I would never be a great writer because I had a happy childhood.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
You need both. You need both.
Yeah, I think so. And so what about the bakery? Where did that come from?
Again, an organic, well, Lulu married very, very young, and I wanted, to be able to portray, thank you, Anne Marie. I wanted to bring, I remember with that chapter, it was like, what did she marry into? What did she marry into? I thought, what better than the big Italian family who owns a bakery in Brooklyn? And where Melise loves jewelry and fashion and art. I love food and baking and
Perfect.
cooking. So that's actually, my agent has said, you are the best describer of food of anybody I know. So that's where my upset. So it just came again, it came organically. And the way we both drew on our backgrounds, I think, is the settings. So I had it on, Church Avenue and Cortelyou Road, and I went back there with Jeff, with my husband, and we walked, and I found the exact spot, and I walked right to Jeff's old. He grew up there also, to his old school in Ditmas Park, and I found the house for where Lulu lived, and then
That's such fun.
the settings in Manhattan all came from MJ. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a place that you brought up that I thought, is that real? That was the library. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Oh yeah, the New York Society Library on 79th Street, a fabulous private library that I always tell people it's $100 a year to join. And if you're in New York a lot, it's a great place to go sit and be quiet in between meetings and things. And very few people know about it, but it's very special.
So did you have to, MJ, did you have to do a lot of research for the whole fashion and the Coco Chanel thing, or is this?
Not on this
you
one.
knew
No.
all this stuff?
I do so much research on all my books, and this book
know.
required almost none. It was looking up pieces on First Dibs to get their exact descriptions of all the great Chanel pieces
Oh,
and getting all the Chanel quotes that we used in the book. But no, this one was like, I grew up in the apartment that actually we make Beth's apartment.
oh,
I lived there
really?
till I was 10 years old. And
Did you-
it's just
did you have
all
the
my
big
favorite
closet?
places. No, I didn't have the closet, but it's all a lot of my favorite places in New York. It was just easy because Gabby is so much a New Yorker, and an Upper East Side New Yorker as Bet was. So it just was all there.
That's amazing. You had all of that in your head. And so what about Beth? She's an outrageous, fascinating character. Where did she come from?
She's
Well,
nothing like my mother.
a lot of
Nothing
Beck-
like your mother.
Nothing
Anything
like
like
my
your
mother.
mother. No mothers.
Yeah, no, Randy has it has Randy overtones, not mine.
Your mother was a fashionista?
She was actually.
Really?
Always. She always looked perfect. She would actually have clothes made for her while we were, I think, on welfare. Just like she would have one perfect outfit. She was a party girl. She was always out there, and we had no clothes. My sister and I, and my mother. How you look was the most important thing in the world to her, and she was quite gorgeous. And so she managed to give Jill and I almost all the neuroses that we have, my sister, which was lovely. We really appreciate it. But one of the things in the book comes directly from my sister and I, where the sisters called the mother the wire monkey mother. And that's what we used to call.
Really? That's
That's
kind
what-
of creepy.
And we used to call my mother that, like we would cling to, it's from the experiment where the monkeys would cling to the wire monkey no matter
Baby
what.
monkeys.
And
Yeah.
my mother had a lot of good qualities. She had tons of friends. And that was also where a lot of that came from, that it was always amazing to us that my mother had so many friends, but she wasn't meant to be a mom. And she actually, one of the things that was very touching to me that she said to me later in life when we got much closer, she said, you're so much a better mother than I ever was or ever could be. So that, so we managed to, so I was able to draw a lot of that. And my sister and I did have a lot of tugs, as you often do, but yet our loyalty was always to each other because we're all we had. And now we're like best friends. So, again, we drew on very different things, MJ and I.
And the whole thing worked. So what would you like the reader to take away from this book? What is it that you feel, is what you want them to know or think of?
I think that I really wanted this to be a book that somebody would enjoy reading and they would be happy when they finished. Very simple, not complicated goal here. There's just so much that's going on in the world and so much trouble and strife and misery that I just really wanted this to be a book about women of a certain age who aren't invisible, who still have a lot to do with their lives and can really enjoy moving forward. And I just love the line about the book, which is two estranged sisters find that forgiveness never goes out of style when they inherit their mother's vintage jackets, purses, and pearls of wisdom. And that just sums up everything that I want somebody to feel after they finish the book.
Yeah, Randy, you feel the same way?
Yes, and I would add to that, yes, very much more than anything, my goal with every book is to give people a good read. I mean, that you can get immersed in. And the message, I guess if there was a message I wanted to put out there, in fact, I woke up with this thought in my head. I just remembered this yesterday morning. It's never too late. Even after somebody dies, you can still come to grips and they're still out there and you can still feel a forgiveness and a goodness.
Wow, that's so nice.
And I think that was in the book.
Yeah, it was. And I think it is a good antidote to everyday life.
We all lost people and they're out there.
Yeah.
And if we let them, they can actually take care of us a little bit.
Oh, that's very nice. So is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to answer?
Yeah, there's a little bit. I just want to talk about the magic a little bit because it's very important to me. I really believe in magic. I believe that magic and mystery are all around us, and that if I exaggerate it a little bit in everything that I write, it'll help people find and focus on the magic and mystery in their own lives. And so we have a little bit of magic realism in the book, and I'm not going to give it away, but it is one of my favorite parts of the book. And the feeling tone that it gives you is that Beth, the mother, is actually looking down on her daughters and she really wants to help them move ahead. And so we've kind of concocted this wonderful little magical way that she does that, and the sisters get very involved in it. And it's really my favorite part of the book. So I just wanted to whet everybody's appetite that there's a little tiny bit of magic.
And I guess the piece I wanted to think is that one of the things that I love about writing about family dynamics is that it's very much like the blind men touching the elephant and everybody describes the elephant a different way. I think with siblings, whenever you have siblings, and you remember your past, and it's like you were in different families sometimes. I mean, my sister and I, no, that didn't happen that way. And I really love bringing that out so that we realize it's not just us. And it's okay. It's okay for siblings to remember things different ways. We each own our own past.
Yeah. And, and our memories aren't that great anyway. So,
Thank God. Thank God.
so that's all good. Well, I think we should turn this over to questions because it looks to me like the chat has been very active.
Yeah, they're talking about us behind our backs.
Yeah, really. Good thing Stacy's going to let us see what they said.
Yes, there's been a lot of great conversation going on, actually. So the first one I'd like to read to you is Susan's question about whether each of you could read your favorite passage tonight, because I thought, that could take a little bit of time. And if you're willing to, I think that people might enjoy that, just something short.
I don't even have the book here. I sent
Okay.
away all my copies, and I don't actually, I can describe one of my favorite scenes,
Sure.
which is, I love the scene in Bergdorf Goodman when Gabby's really depressed and she goes there, and Gabby's divorced and she used to have a lot of money and she used to have a certain lifestyle that she doesn't have anymore. And so she goes back to her happy place, which is Bergdorf Goodman. She has two happy places in the book. One is the museum of the Metropolis Museum of Art, where she goes to look at a John Singer Sargent painting. And then she goes to Bergdorf Goodman to look at the jewelry department. And she sees this beautiful heart that I actually am wearing a version of. And she sees this beautiful opal heart and she falls in love with it. And she actually fantasizes about shoplifting. And it's so real to me. She so comes to life for me in that scene, even though it's almost at the end of the book. And it's my favorite scene. I know the jeweler. I wrote most of this scene, and the jeweler is a woman that I've known for a long time, and the description of the piece is exact. And it was just so much fun to be able to put into the book something that's so beautiful to me that I've seen so many times. And then, of course, the reason it's my favorite scene is that the jeweler read it. I gave her an early copy, and she was so taken that I had included her in the jewelry in the book that she turned around and gave me
She
a
gave
piece.
it to you?
Yeah, she gave it to me just like in the book. But it was like, wow, that was worth it.
Yeah. Well, okay, but now I have to ask you a question. So have you contemplated theft at Bergdorf's?
That totally came, actually not just contemplated, but that came out of what I did when I was a teenager, where there was this little jewelry store in Madison Avenue called Eve Jewelers. And my grandmother and my mother both bought jewelry there. And I'd go in and I'd put on all this jewelry, and then I'd take it all off except for one little piece, and I'd leave. And it was like a mom and pop little shop. And very often they didn't notice, or they noticed and called my grandmother and she paid for the jewelry. I've never known. But yes, it totally came out of something I did when I was 15.
That's kind of what I thought.
I do have the book here, and I'm just going to read the first paragraph because we did a preface where they were little girls. And I feel that it kind of sets up in just 2 pages. I'm only going to read the first paragraph, how intense these sisters were together. Sad little girls in New York City were not an unusual sight. Put those girls alone on a subway platform, however, and people paid attention. Strangers approached Gabrielle and Lulu when they traveled, asking questions in concerned voices. Are you lost? Do you need help? And to me, in those short little things, we just sort of set up, and then boom, we go right into them as adults. By the way, Barbara, I also had a little bit of a thievery I stole a fox collared fur coat from Bloomingdale's when I was 17.
Really? Did you get caught?
No, I walked down the stairs. This is before they had the tags. And I walked down the stairs though, and with my best friend, Debbie, who might be here somewhere. And Debbie's, do you remember in Bloomingdale's in Manhattan, there are those stairs going down they had those sort of marble kind of stairs. They had them, and Debbie suddenly goes, the tag, the tag, the tag. And there was a big tag right here. So I walked down the stairs like this, like I was the Pledge of Allegiance. And then when we got downstairs and went to chock full of nuts, I made Debbie go back and get the raincoat I'd left there, the old raincoat. Well,
Confessions, confessions.
yeah, it was a long time ago.
That's great. Mindy would like to know if there's any chance you'll be doing any signings in New York.
Not currently because of COVID, but
Yeah, but-
for me, if anybody writes me through my website, I'm more than happy to send a signed book plate.
Same here. Just email me and I'll get it right out to you. I actually have an in-house postal service, which is what I like to call my husband. If you're out there,
And he
I
retired.
appreciate it.
It's great. Kathy said she's interested to hear how you came up with Beth's group of friends. Where did those characters come from?
I was fascinated by my mother's friends growing up. They were meant a lot to me because, and I think it's because I didn't have a lot of ways to get inside her. She was very cut off, but her friends were really warm and wonderful and funny. And to me, they were so glamorous. Looking back, I'm sure they weren't quite that, they were Brooklyn glamorous. What can I say, and I just kind of brought that. A lot of writing is just bringing up the emotional essence of something from your past. So that to me was, and I've always had big groups of friends. And I had the same group of friends, best friends. Oh my goodness, I don't want to say how many decades. They were all here on the chat and they're all wonderful. And I'm wearing something from each of them right now. And they're all surrounded in this room with various things. So I guess now I'm getting to that age where I am that group.
Let's see. Juliet would like to know what you're each working on now.
Hi,
Oh.
Juliet.
Hi. I actually never do this. I think that we're here to talk about the book that we're talking about. And if I start talking about a future book, I'm just going to confuse everybody with a whole other story and other names. And it's not even for sale yet. So I'm going to pass. But I love it.
Well, I'm not as worried about putting a Kinahara on the book, but I'll just say it's very different. And with it, I can just say it very quickly. It goes from 1964 to almost the present, and it's about the group that was very political in the 60s and 70s and lived in communes. And in this particular case, they set up a little separate commune for their children so they can concentrate on their politics. And needless to say, trouble does ensue.
That sounds good.
Intense.
Barbara, you want to give us a little teaser for your upcoming book?
Yes, Barbara, because yours is coming out soon. So tell us about your wonderful book.
Well, the book is called Metropolis, and it's also very different from my previous books. And it's a story of 6 characters who have nothing in common. They come from different walks of life. They're Black, they're white, they're gay, they're straight, they're rich, they're poor. And the thing that they have in common was they all have something to do with a self-storage facility in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is this big, monstrous brick building that looks like a medieval castle. And there's Zach, who is an ex-drug dealer who owns it. There is the woman who manages it, who is taking money on the side because she's letting people live there. There's the homeless photographer who takes his pictures and develops them there. There's the lawyer who has his office there. And they all, then, something happens and they all get pulled together and torn apart. And it takes place in Boston, and it's also about class in America, about how your class of origin, your parents' socioeconomic level, influences the rest of your life.
And having read every single one of your books, I have no doubt this is going to be just as riveting and different as
Oh,
all the
thank
others. That's
you.
one of the strengths you have, is that you
No,
don't
thank
keep
you.
telling the same story over and over again, and it's wonderful.
Thank
Can't
you.
wait.
Thank you. I could send you an arc if you want one.
I would love one. I'm sure there are
Okay.
people in the audience who would love one too, who are now very jealous. But if you send it to me, I'll send it to someone in the audience.
Okay.
Nicole said you told us about what your respective strengths were in parts of writing the book you were most comfortable with. What was the toughest part for each of you?
Well, that's the benefit of writing with somebody else, is that you don't have to do the tough parts. You let them do it. So for me, there really wasn't, there was no real, I guess the only tough part of the book for me was Grammarly, because that's where we have a very different writing style, where Randy uses this software program called Grammarly to run everything through. And I don't like anything that they do. So it was driving me completely crazy that Grammarly kept making suggestions that I found completely not my style. But that wasn't Randy, that was the program.
I I can't think of the toughest part. Anyway, I hate sharing the bad. I don't like sharing the good.
Okay.
Actually, probably the toughest part for me was going back into my childhood and feeling some of it, but I'm used to that. That's my writing.
Yeah.
Mindy would like to know what you're all reading now.
Oh, I am reading such a fabulous book. I cannot wait to finish it tonight. I will finally finish it. Honor by
Oh, yeah.
Umagar. And
I just did an event with her.
I'm a huge fan of Thready's. I have read every single one of her books.
She's wonderful.
And she manages to tell this involved family and friends and everything story. And her writing is gorgeous. She has everything. She has story, and she's got beautiful writing, and she's got a wonderful sense of morality and politics that comes in, but doesn't
Doesn't
damage
get in the way.
It's just one, and I will say though, it's dark, not an undark read. So, but I am just, it's every night I can't wait to get to bed and open it up.
Great.
I just finished a book that was not out yet, and I'm reading John Searle's book, The Affair. John is an old friend and wonderful writer, and it's a terrific book. I just started it, but it's really wonderful. So I highly recommend that. Oh, and also next up is Magnolia, The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis, who's also a really good friend, and it's about the Frick Museum. Barbara, you should read it. It's it sounds fabulous, because it has a lot to do with the art in the Frick, which I know that you love too.
Yeah. Oh, so I just finished an odd book for me to read, but some of it is for research for my next book. And it's called Hidden Valley Road. And it is about a family of 12. And there are 10 brothers and 2 sisters, and 6 of the brothers have schizophrenia. It's absolutely fascinating. What's happened is about the kids themselves, and then, adults. And then the other half is about the research into schizophrenia and what's going on and what they're doing. And I thought it was just great. It's a little dark.
I love the book. I'm there.
Meta would like to know if you find it hard to let go of characters you've become attached to when you move on to writing a new book.
Sometimes it really depends on the book. There's a book that I wrote called The Secret Language of Stones, and it's not my most successful book, but it's my favorite book that I've written out of 23 novels. And I've never gotten over giving up those characters. But that's the only one that I really had, and I don't know why, that kind of strange attachment to. I'm usually so tired of them by the time I'm finished with a book that I've rewritten it so many times. And I'm like, get me away from these people. And I'm so excited to go meet new people in the next book.
That's also my favorite book of Melissa's.
I love that book.
That's my favorite
It didn't
book
do
that
that
was
well.
written. I feel like I carry not only all of my characters inside, but I teach. So I have characters inside me from like my first writing groups back in the day. So sometimes I feel like I got to tumble some of them out. But the one that I hold on to the most is from my first book, The Murderer's Daughters, probably because it was the most akin to something from my life, Lulu and Mary. And I often think, I wonder how their children, how Lulu's children are doing. It's like, no, they're not real, Randy. But I like to think that they're all just doing great. I wish them well.
Any
All
other
of
questions?
mine are dead because it's all of mine are historical. So they're all dead.
right,
I
a lot
never
of them are
thought
dead.
about that, but they're all dead now. That's very sad. Oh, well.
Well, Lulu and Gabby are still hanging out.
They're still alive. Yeah, they're still alive.
No Beth, though.
No, she's gone.
But her jewelry and her clothes are all over.
They'll live forever.
Yeah, they were all on first dibs.
So I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think unless any of you have anything you would like to say, we'll probably wrap up.
I just want to say thank you to, I see lots of friends on the list with their comments and family. And thank you all so much for coming. There are a lot of people whose names I recognize, but I really wish, Mindy, I wish I could meet you in person. Mindy is somebody from Facebook. Mindy Ehrlich, my shout out is to you. I'm dedicating this to you.
Yes, thank you all so much for coming in. Barbara, thank you so much for reading the book and doing this. That was a great favor you did us. So thank you.
Not really. It was it was pretty easy.
Thank you.
And it was, I mean, it's always a pleasure to hang with you guys, even if we can't hug each other.
Yeah.
But
Virtual hugs.
the one thing I want to say is this book is really, really good, and you should all go out and buy it. And when you're sitting in the dark, cold, pandemic winter, it's a good antidote. Good
Thank you.
antidote.
Thank you so much. And please, Stacey, send us I'd love to see the chat because interesting things were going by, but I couldn't really see them. So it'd be wonderful.
I definitely will.
Okay.
And thank you all so much for this great event. It was so much fun. And thank you all for coming. And we wish you the best of luck with the book. And Barbara, we wish you the best of luck with yours. Yes, and please do stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
We'll miss
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Bye.